Konnichiwa, Pat Tokuyama here, creator of the Japanese Cooking Club and All Day I Eat Like a Shark, where I help people learn how to make plant-based Japanese food. So today what we're going to be doing is making enoki mushrooms, enoki dake, 3 different delicious ways, and you guys can let me know which one is your favorite by letting me know in the comments below. Alright, we have all of our ingredients here for this particular ankake dish, enoki ankake. And we're not going to be using all of those enoki mushrooms, but if you wanted to, you could. It's just going to be really thick. So here we are preparing our enoki mushrooms. If you've never used them before, the first thing that you got to do is cut off that rough part that's close to the growing medium. Don't necessarily want to be eating that. It is pretty fibrous, and I try to cut as close to that as possible. 1, so that the mushrooms don't fall apart, and 2, so that I don't waste anything. That would be mottai nai. Same thing again with the brown enoki mushrooms. Mottai nai shinai de. Don't waste it. So next thing that we're going to be doing here is preparing our rainbow chard. We are going to be de-stemming them. We're going to be only using most of the stem and then a little bit of the leaves, which are going to be cooking a lot quicker than the stems, which is why we're separating them. One of the reasons why. And then the second thing that we're going to be doing is cutting them into small slivers the long way so that they're similar in size and shape to the enoki mushrooms. And this is primarily for presentation purposes. If you don't necessarily care about how your food looks and you just want to eat it, then you don't necessarily need to be cutting it this way, and you could just cut it however which way you want. And all of those chard leaves, while as delicious as they are, we're only going to be using a handful, so you can save the rest for another saute, stir fry, or maybe even steamed. So for our ingredients, we have about 2 teaspoons of shoyu, soy sauce. We have about 2 tablespoons of katakuriko, potato starch dissolved in about a 1/4 cup of water. We have about 1 tablespoon of mirin and 2 tablespoons of osake. And of course, wasabi. So I think I just turned on the stove. That was what I did right there. And now what we're going to be doing is preparing the chard, just like I mentioned, cutting it the long way so that it's in the similar shape to the enoki mushrooms. And if you get little pieces of leaf, just go ahead and add them to the leaf pile, and we can pull in some of those towards the end of the cooking. Chop, 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 chop. I guess you could use some scissors here if you wanted to. More arts and craftsy versus cooking. So, question of the day, do you like enoki mushrooms as much as me? They do have a pretty unique flavor, and depending on how you cook them, you may notice it or you may not notice it if you're using somewhat of a stronger flavor base. For this, we're using wasabi, so that is going to be the main flavor, as well as some vegetable broth and a little bit of shoyu, so you will be able to taste the mushrooms and enjoy them. So there is 3 cups of boiling vegetable broth. I just use better than bouillon. And we put in the Swiss chard stems so that they cook first and soften up. And then we're going to be putting in the enoki mushrooms, breaking them apart so that they cook evenly and so that they mix evenly as well. So you're just going to cook this together for a few minutes. And we're going to add in the brown enoki mushrooms as well. And if for whatever reason you cannot find the brown enoki mushrooms, don't worry, just use white instead, or any other type of mushroom. So at this point, what you're going to do is bring this to a boil, and once it starts to boil, you're just going to go ahead and simmer it for about 5 to 10 minutes at the most. And then we're going to drop in the katakuriko slurry. Make sure to reconstitute it all. Make sure all that powder is suspended in the solution so that you don't get any large clumps of starch, which you would not want to eat. It tastes much better when it's evenly mixed, and it makes a nice thick, almost gravy-like sauce. So you can eat this as a side, or you can actually serve it over some rice for ankake donburi, which is a brown rice bowl, or you can even use white rice as well. And it's very, very delicious and filling thanks to the mushrooms, which have plenty of protein and fiber and flavor and umami, but not as much as dried mushrooms. The reason why dried mushrooms, in case you were wondering, have more umami than fresh mushrooms is that once the flesh of the mushroom dries, it breaks the cell walls that are full of the umami, and it releases those once you make dashi from the dried mushrooms. And look, I just added the chard leaves. I only used probably about a cup's worth, but you can put as much as you want, and we're almost done. So the next step is going to be to add in the osake and then the mirin and then the shoyu, so that all of the alcohol gets cooked off and the umami is left behind. And then there's the shoyu. So for the wasabi, we're going to be using about 2 tablespoons because I enjoy wasabi. If we had fresh wasabi, it would be even better, but that is a little bit harder to find for most people. So use what you can get. You can even use wasabi powder as well. Just giving it a good stir to make sure all those wasabi little bits were evenly distributed. And we're just going to cook it until the alcohol smell is gone. And then we're going to thicken it up with the katakuriko, potato starch. All right, so there it goes. Make sure to stir it. And then once you add it, make sure to stir it again. And then in case your mixture is not hot enough, if you have not noticed thickening immediately, what you need to do is turn up the heat if you turned it off by accident, so that the starch gets activated, and you'll notice right away that it becomes much thicker. Yeah, look at that. Yum. Oishiso. Looks delicious. Ooh, yeah, look at how thick that is. It's like gravy without the fat. All right, so at this point, we are just about done. All you gotta do is serve it with your favorite bowl and or some rice, and you have a nice little meal or even a side dish, which is full of umami and mushroomy / wasabi flavor. Let me know what you guys think. Alright guys, well if you like that dish, chances are you might like this one as well. This one's going to be a little bit sweet and a little bit sour. It's going to be an amazu, which is a sweet vinegar pickle. In this video, these are the ingredients that we're going to be using. Surprise! Enoki! Alright, so here first we're going to be starting off with about a half teaspoon of salt, about 2 tablespoons of sugar, and about a half cup of rice vinegar. 100 mils. About a half cup of julienne carrots. There's a little close-up for you. About a half bunch of white enoki mushrooms, and then a half bunch of the brown enoki mushrooms. And I don't know what I was doing there, but I wanted to just show you how jiggly they were, I guess. And there's some brown mushrooms, the brown enoki mushrooms. They taste slightly different, and they're a little bit brown as compared to the white enoki mushrooms. Not sure what else to say there, but if you can't find them, just use whatever you can find. So I have 2 pots here. The first pot is going to be for the amazu. We're going to be boiling the vinegar with the sugar and the salt to concentrate it, and then also dissolve the sugar and the salt in the vinegar. And then in the other pots, what we're going to be doing is blanching everything. So just bring the vinegar mixture to a boil, and then once all of the salt crystals and the sugar crystals have dissolved, then it's ready to use. So first we're going to drop in those carrots into the blanching water. So there's a little bit of salt in there as well as water. And then what we're going to be doing is adding in the enoki mushrooms and then cooking those together for about 4 to 5 minutes, depending on how firm you want your carrots and mushrooms to be. So again, try to break them up as evenly as possible so that they get seasoned evenly. And they also break apart when you go and try to eat them with your ohashi, your chopsticks. So just making sure to break those up as much as possible. And then at this point, what we're going to do is let it cook, bring it to boil, and then simmer, and then we're going to strain everything. And once you squeeze out the excess liquid, what we're going to do is just combine it with the sweet vinegar and let it pickle overnight, ideally. And the next day it'll be ready to eat. It's going to be quite delicious. And if you're really picky about getting all of the water or moisture out of your vegetables, later on I just use the spatula to press it out lightly. You can actually squeeze it with your hands once it's completely cooled. That way you'll get all of the excess moisture out. The flavor is going to be a little bit stronger, so it's totally up to you. But if you prefer that sort of stronger flavor, then by all means go ahead and squeeze it like you mean it. So just showing you up close, the solids have mostly dissolved, so I'm going to go ahead and Just cook it a little bit longer and then it'll be done. And then make sure that your vegetables are evenly cooking. Look at those enoki mushrooms. Oishiso. Give it a little bit of a stir, and then you're going to go ahead and strain it. Alright, so now we are going to be pushing out the excess water very gently. Got to be careful with the enoki because the little mushroom caps fall off very easily. They're very delicate, so try not to be too rough with them. Okay, so now that our work is done, what we're going to do is just transfer the blanched enoki and carrots into our little glassware and combine it with the sweet vinegar and let it marinate overnight, and the next day it'll be ready to eat. Oh yeah, careful not to get too close to the vinegar. Make sure to give it a good stir as well, and once it's cool, put it in the refrigerator and you'll be in for a treat. Tanoshimi ni shiteru? Are you looking forward to this? Yum. Alright, well if you guys like those last two enoki mushroom dishes, what you're probably going to like is this third one as well. So we have 1 pack of white enoki mushrooms, and then we have an equal amount of garlic chives, nira, cut to the same length as the enoki. We have 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, gomabura, we have 2 teaspoons of shoyu, soy sauce, and then we have about 2 teaspoons of toasted and ground sesame seeds. Here we have about 3 cups-ish of boiling water with a little bit of salt for blanching the nira as well as the enoki mushrooms. So we're going to cook this for about 3 to 4 minutes until it's softened up. Try to make sure to break them apart evenly so that you can get nice little strands intermixed with the nira. It's just for appearance sake, so if you don't necessarily care how it looks, you can by all means eat it as a large clump of enoki mushrooms if that is your style. Sometimes I do that when I eat nabemono, which is Japanese style hot pot. Perhaps you do too, because it makes for a much better appearance when you have the enoki mushrooms stuck together as opposed to flying all over the place or swimming around everywhere. Look at that. There they are, just about almost done. So once they are done cooking for about 3 to 4 minutes, what we can do is drain them. And then like we did with the other recipe where we blanch them, we're also going to be pressing on these very gently so that we don't break off any of those little mushroom caps. They're very delicate, like I mentioned. Kyotsukete ne. Be careful. And of course you want to try to get as much of the excess water out so that you don't dilute the seasoning. And I think I forgot to mention, this is going to be a namuru, so it's going to be sort of like a Korean style Japanese dish. So once it has been pushed out, all of the excess water has been pushed out, what we're going to do is just combine each of those seasonings. And if you wanted to, you can actually put in a bunch of sesame seeds in place of the oil. But I personally like the sesame oil for very rich and well-rounded flavor, and really complements the sesame seeds as well as the shoyu, and chances are you might like it. You can even use black sesame seeds as well for a little bit of a different appearance, and this tastes delicious right when it's made, so when it's especially slightly warm from the cooking, and all you got to do is try to mix it and serve it. So that was our final dish. I'd be curious, what was your favorite of the 3 enoki mushroom dishes that we just made? Let me know in the comments right now. If you want to see more plant-based Japanese cooking videos like this one, subscribe if you haven't already, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and let me know if you have any questions or comments below. Jana, bye bye. Hey look, there's a little purple fish on my shirt. Did you guys notice that it's wearing a hat? I think it likes to cook, just like me. Oh yeah, and if you want, you can get these shirts in my store. alldayieat.com/shop if you are interested. And if you're curious about learning how to cook plant-based Japanese food and taking that to the next level, consider joining the Japanese Cooking Club, where I help people learn how to make plant-based Japanese food. JapaneseCookingClub.com to learn more.